precedent.
And I didn't mean to suggest that just because the other neighborhood associations that have overlays don't include the commercial area that they can't, because they can. It's not a precedent kind of thing. I mean, but obviously there's been a lot of strife. Really, what this boils down to, I think, was an argument over whether or not there ought to be an architectural review board, essentially. And I think the one side insisted that was not acceptable, particularly from the commercial point of view, and there is justification for that. Right. And I think there was, to some degree, some concession on the other side to make this a voluntary kind of an advisory commission.
If it's advisory, why do it? In other words,
well, then why do we have the 2020 plan? Because it's advisory as well, and that's a land use plan.
But if it is advisory and it really has no teeth and it doesn't make you do anything, then what it does do is simply add time. And I thought that the whole goal, as we have talked about here from the retreat, was to streamline the ability for business to do business here, and this would seem to inhibit that.
That's part of that. That is one of the goals that came out of the retreat, was to streamline. So not all business transactions, but certainly as many as we can. Right. This is kind of an application that stems from the grassroots, not only the business community in this area, but also the residents in this area. So right. It's a little bit different kind of a situation. But I agree with you. I mean, that's one of the goals, is to try and streamline business. But one of the goals is also to improve some of the neighborhoods, and that's where some of these come in.
And you know, I mean, there's a part of me that says, why in the world has this community allowed neighborhoods like this to get in the condition that they are in?
Right.
I mean, and then not to expect a kind of a blowback at some point, and then to get, you know, I understand businesses need to function, but I'm a business person over there, right. And I'm having a heck of a time functioning over there, because I'm trying to do things the right way, and I am surrounded by people who are not doing things the right way. They scare my tenants away. They hurt. They're bad for my business, and I want the rest of the business community to say, no more of this. This needs to stop.
Well, they might.
And don't expect, and please don't expect that there won't be blowback if you're going to sit there negligently by for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and let a neighborhood slowly become decimated by corporate citizens who just have nobody's interest at heart.
But that overstates it a bit, because what we have seen in the last 10, 20 years is, for instance, the improvement in that whole neighborhood where the Atkins building is, that's been a model of improvement. That's going in the right direction. What you're saying you try to do as a businessman is going in the right direction, but what you want to do is make these people who are doing the right thing responsible for the people who aren't. No other neighborhood association is charged with that responsibility.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I think the expectation that if, as a business person or as a person in a neighborhood, you are going to sit idly by and watch the neighborhood decline, which is what has happened in large measure, not among everybody over there, but among a lot of the business community and a lot of the residential community. This is an outgrowth of that, and certainly the Atkins building and a lot of the renovations that have occurred over there over the years have been wonderful, shining lights. But do business over there, Mark, and live over there, and you'll find that I am not overstating the case. It's a serious problem, and we got to deal with it.
I don't do business there, and I don't live over there, but what I do understand is how neighborhood associations function. And I have never seen one that has been charged with kicking out its own members. And that's what you're in essence saying, is that we need to be self-policing as a neighborhood association. What the business community is saying is, we can be an ally with you, but we don't want to adhere to a group of rules that were designed with residential in mind, that don't apply to us, that will make our cost of business higher, and that we could be your friend in eradicating this.
But essentially, Mark,
and I have no problem with that.
Essentially, Mark, we were told that they may, just because they have the name that they applied for in the first place, that is the business district name, which I think was useful, because at least it's distinguishable from the, it's different, and it really does represent their interest. They said when they tabled this that unless they can become a full-blown neighborhood association, they may not even want to be a district association. So I'm not exactly sure what the motivation there is.
Well, I think it's parity.
Well, sure, but with the discussion revolved around giving them parity, just having a different name but a different kind of an organization. We still have to deal with this overlapping business. I just wanted to get back to we can always pick out the good neighbors and the bad neighbors. The Atkins and the Columbia College and so on and so forth have done a lot for that area, there's no question. But there are really bad players in this whole thing too. Okay. And I think that's the impetus for this was to try and get the best of both of those worlds, the commercial areas and the industrial areas and the residential areas together, to try and come up with something that would protect the neighborhood to some degree. I wish you were the moderator here when you were asking, how did we get here? But let me answer the question, since I am the moderator, or at least try to a little bit. I think a lot of this goes to a much broader area, and obviously we're not going to solve the overlay thing. I'm not sure that the city council is going to solve it at the next meeting, and certainly not to everyone's satisfaction. Right. But I think a lot of this gets back to the old 900-pound gorilla in the room, and that is growth in this town, and new growth in particular. And how new growth, to some degree, I know people are going to scream and holler when they hear this, but to some degree has been subsidized for a long time, when some in the development community would get a great deal on a piece of property far outside the city center. And at that time, they wanted to make sure that everybody realized that they really didn't want too much regulation. They wanted to be left alone, let the market play out, and so on and so forth. And most of us, I think, paid some attention to that. We weren't in the business of giving people marketing advice as to what they should buy and what they should do in general, aside from zoning issues and some of that stuff. But once they got the property and they got a great deal on it, all of a sudden they became small D Democrats. And then they wanted everybody to help pay for access to that property. And most of the big fights that I got into with some in the development community, some very large profile issues, had very little to do with the ability for the free market to determine what it is that they wanted to build there. It had a lot to do with the contribution that I felt they should have made to help with those access issues. And what has happened, I think, because of the last 10 or 15 years, I can remember Paul Land, for example, who works with, he's a commercial developer, a real estate man, a very impressive guy. I like Paul a lot. But I can remember going to an economic conference and about 10 years ago, he said, times couldn't be better. He said, these are great times. Well, now times are not quite so good. And frankly, the business is down in general. What we failed to do was we failed to pay for all of this explosive new growth. We had this, when we needed these access issues for all of this explosive growth that we were experiencing, the city had to buy into this and help out. Sure, it was in the interest of the city to some degree, but the bigger the city gets, the less it is in any individual's interest to build a road to access to property on the other side of town. And we never put enough money aside for maintenance, for the parts of town that have been here for a long time. We never had the mechanism to be able to maintain these properties adequately, and now we're paying the price.
Yeah, well, it's more than just infrastructure, it's housing stock. We're talking about really housing stock in the North Central Neighborhood Association area. And those are the affordable, those are more affordable. If you want to keep charging more, or directly doing impact fees or imposing that type of thing, all you do is make the housing stock on the perimeter become even more unaffordable. And you know that there's that group out there too that has tried to take a look at affordable housing, and what they found is that the most affordable housing is downtown or in the central city. Those are the properties that are most at risk. It's not because they have bad streets, it's because they either have bad management, or they have people that don't care, or they have people that are criminals and don't take care of their own
Frankly,
property.
I think part of it is they have bad streets as well. And